Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. In 1928, MGM Studios released a film called White Shadows on the South Seas. Never heard of it? No worries, most haven't. But what made the film noteworthy was that it was the first film to feature the roar of Leo the Lion to open the film, and the transition from silent films to talkies was underway. But more than that, the movie itself began seconds later, not minutes. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, the film's opening before the opening. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
Let me ask you something. When did sitting down for a movie become a test of endurance? You enter the theater expecting a story, escape. Instead, you get a logo, followed by another logo, and another logo. It's a parade of corporate, for lack of a better word, obelisks. And to me, they silently whisper, "We own your eyeballs, but we refuse responsibility for the story." You know, by the time the movie starts, you've watched what I consider to be for lack of a better metaphor, a pregame show for a PowerPoint seminar on liability. More later. And this reminds me of movie titles. Because if you remember the 80s and 90s, titles had balls. They demanded attention. They didn't apologize. They didn't run through a focus group in Singapore to check global receptivity. Remember Die Hard, Fatal Attraction, The Untouchables, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, The Terminator. Say them aloud. Hear the aggression? Feel the certainty? Today, titles are sterile to me. They seem like algorithm-tested, SEO-optimized, functional content modules, so to speak, designed to vanish from memory the moment they're released. Mine most certainly disappear, fortunately. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, and others each churn out films like flavorless plastic toys. They're functional, color-coded, but devoid of nerve. And it's no accident. The logo parade, the neutered title. They're all symptoms of the same disease. The corporate death of daring. Before 1980, Hollywood was kingdoms. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Leo the Lion, roared like a god. Warner Brothers, it was rough-edged, dangerous, decisively alive. Think Hobart. Paramount Pictures, polished, continental, superior. Think studio chief Robert Evans. 20th Century Fox, it was grand, theatrical, impossible to ignore. Think Star Wars, Avatar, and RKO Radio Pictures. Vanished now, but once lethal, stylish, ambitious. Think Howard Hughes. One logo, one ego, one voice capable of ruining careers with a glance, and they did. Louis B. Mayer, chief of MGM, didn't need consensus. Jack Warner, chief at Warner Brothers, didn't negotiate. They were moguls, flawed, terrifying, decisive, yes, and their films reflected it. Titles weren't compromised, they were proclamations, in my opinion. Trying to say that about a movie greenlit by, say, Streamco Holdings LLC. Spoiler, it will have no soul. Then the 80s and 90s arrived. It was the last era of studios that, in my opinion, dared to be human. Carolco Pictures. It was a comet streaking across the celluloid. It was audacious. It was reckless. Magnificent. Think of the Rambo franchise and Terminator. TriStar Pictures. It was sleek, seductive. A Pegasus of ambition that actually meant something. Think Jerry Maguire in Philadelphia. Or Ryan Pictures. Cerebral, merciless. The Predator behind Platoon and Silence of the Lambs. New Line Cinema. The House That Freddy Built and Lord of the Rings. Miramax, a gladiator for awards, willing to fight for every inch of creative territory. Think Tarantino films, Coen Brothers, Scorsese, and the Halloween franchise. Miramax was named after the creators, Father, Max, and Miriam. And then the Weinstein Company, morally compromised yet unforgettable. Think Tarantino. They were a match made in heaven. They gave Quentin a long leash and let him do his job. These studios didn't exist to protect a brand. They existed to burn, to dazzle, to intimidate, and occasionally bankrupt themselves in pursuit of greatness. Why not? You got to go out sometime. Titles weren't sewn together in a conference call. They were shouted out. Total Recall. It was muscular, excessive, unrepentant. Basic Instinct. It was sleek, provocative, like a scalpel. The Silence of the Lambs. Cold-blooded, but intelligent. Try saying that about Mega Stream Company Holdings, LLC. You can't. Now we have titles resembling, say, a modern blockbuster opens with Studio A, Production Banner B, International Co-Financier C, Tax Incentive Partner D, Streaming Platform E, Special Purpose Acquisition Vehicle F. Each logo is a slice of liability. Each slice gets 2 seconds of attention, and all of them stand between you and the story. Blockbusters now cost $200 million to make, $150 million to market. No one dares to stand alone. The old boldness evaporates and authority thins. So the titles become safe, sanitized, globally digestible. Instead of Die Hard, you get, thinking on my feet here, Operation Retribution, Legacy Protocol. Instead of Fatal Attraction, you get Obsession, a limited series event. Punch is replaced by compliance. That old swagger is replaced by spreadsheets. It's cinema optimized for minimum risk and maximum hashtag engagement. Streaming platforms elevated this into an art form. Netflix doesn't release films. In my opinion, it deploys content verticals. Amazon doesn't greenlight projects. It optimizes engagement funnels. Disney doesn't make movies. It extends intellectual property ecosystems. Warner Brothers Discovery doesn't cancel films. It realigns strategic priorities. The language tells you everything. You know, cinema used to be art dressed as commerce. Now it's commerce dressed as cinema. Think about that. Risk mitigation is the aesthetic. No standalone stories, only universes. No final chapters, only launch pads. No bold titles, only expandable trademarks. The old studios burned bright. Carolco gone. Orion collapsed. New Line absorbed. Miramax resold. TriStar neutered. And the Weinstein Company imploded. They were flawed, monstrous, but they were alive. You only need to look at the Weinstein Company. Today's system tolerates nothing that breathes, only the predictable, only the scalable content. More logos than ever, fewer decision makers than ever. Authority moves upward, outward, and it's invisible. Moguls are replaced by dashboards. Taste is replaced by algorithms. And risk is replaced by reports. Just my opinion. I think I'm right. The movie business, as I've said before, resembles the insurance business. Risk mitigation and nerdy actuarials calculating the likelihood of injury or death. And the titles. Then, in the past, a fist slammed on a desk. That's the name. Now, run it through 5 countries, 3 marketing firms, and don't forget the algorithm. Even the logos have changed. They used to roar. Now they glow, and I'm going to wax poetic, in a minimalist serenity with music licensed from Inspiring Corporate Ambient, Volume 3. See, the aura's gone. Great films still happen sometimes. Artists still fight, directors still push, writers still sneak personality past the compliance wall. But the system is built for insulation from loss, from controversy, from risk. In my opinion, art without risk is simply decor. So when you sit in a theater and watch 6 logos shimmer before the story begins, you're not witnessing credits, you're witnessing a funeral. From moguls to managers, from kingdoms to consortiums, to audacity to optimization. We don't miss the logos, we miss ownership, we miss conviction, we miss the illusion that someone, even though flawed, egotistical, unreasonable, stood behind a film and said, "This is mine. I'll fight for it. I'll defend it. I'll dare to fail." Now it belongs to everyone, which means it belongs to no one. Fade to black. The music swells. The final logo dissolves. And somewhere beneath the layers of financing, branding, risk mitigation, and strategic platform development, a story tries to begin. A story perhaps of what movies once were, of fire, of ambition, of ego, of a Hollywood that dared to roar. Don't be saddened. We can remember it anyway. With the consolidation of 2 major studios as I speak, batten down the hatches and call the crash cart. The movie business is going to need all the help it can get. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint, and I wouldn't blame you a bit if you got up and stormed out of the theater after the second corporate logo and demanded your money back. Good luck. Class is dismissed.
And so while studios like A24 and others are making bank, Jonathan's point is well taken. There was a time when studios felt invested in what you saw on the screen, took pride in it. Before the story even began, the fanfare or the lion's roar set the mood. It's the proverbial raising or separation of the curtain. Speaking of which, have you noticed the gradual disappearance of the curtain at the movie theater? But that's another podcast. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at jonathanfarini.com. Also, look for Used Steinways, in which a young lady meets an unlikely mentor who reveals life lessons found inside pianos. Used Steinways, already published by Egophobia and Mobius magazines, it's been published again, this time in the March edition of The Wise Owl. Go to thewiseowl.art. You can also drop an email anytime to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.